Alright, I'm back for another Destiny 2 video. It's been a little bit, but there's been some stuff going on, both in the game and outside the game, that I thought I would commentate on. Today I want to talk about something that came up on Twitter this past week and on Reddit, and like all of these things based on some Luke Smith quotes from a Polygon interview that has been kind of dribbling out little bits of content with new quotes and stuff every day. I think it was one interview and they're just breaking up the piece into a bunch of different articles, which is smart. That's what I would do if I had interviewed Luke Smith and Joe Blackburn. The quote in question here is about old subclasses getting the stasis treatment in terms of redesigning them so they work with like the aspect and fragment system. A while ago, when stasis was first announced, and they did they revealed the kind of new system it had for fuller customization, they said that they were going to work on the other old light subclasses to do that. That no longer appears to be the case. There's Evie. I knew she'd show up once I started talking. That does not really seem to be the case anytime remotely soon from Smith's comments. And past that, he talked about if they did do it, they might have to cut some supers. And then these are the comments that got everybody all kind of up in arms to the point where Smith had to actually commentate. Evie, what are you smiling at? He actually had to commentate on Reddit, which he like never does. I think he's done it like 7 times ever. So he was kind of clarifying what he said. So first, what he said was, after talking about like what it would take to do this, and he says like in Luke Smith's Fantasyland, like, yeah, we'd be using the same system for all supers. He says, it's much easier for me to look at Nova Bomb and say Nova Bomb is like IP defining. It's an IP defining super. Get rid of Nova Warp. And so you talk about how he's comparing it to a worse ability. With Solar Warlock, we have to, there are 2 really distinct fantasies that don't work together at all. And then he talks about, Well versus Dawnblade. So his point he's making is that you would have to pick one, because Stasis only has 1 super, and then they're using that with the other aspects and fragments that don't really affect the super itself per se, at least not significantly. And to have the same system, he's saying you would have to cut the other supers to like make room for it. This didn't really make sense to a lot of people, and people were like, well, why can't you just put a little drop down like in the aspect and fragment system, be like, all right, I want to do Dawnblade or Well, or I want to do Bubble or Shield, and do it that way. That does sound good, and that sounds like that would be an easy answer. However, I think balancing that and designing for that is probably a little more complicated than people would think. Obviously, we know Stasis only came out with just 1 super per class, and they had to balance the other aspects and fragments around that, and more to come. But I do foresee complications where if they were trying to do aspects and fragments you could fully customize and doing the supers, I think in a perfect world that they should work really hard and try to figure that out. And I agree with everyone that says if it would cost cutting supers like Well or Bubble or Nova Warp or something like that, like, the game doesn't need to lose any more stuff. I think we really want to stop doing that, generally speaking. So I would rather just keep them how they are and then maybe buff them and tweak them a little bit to better compete with Stasis, or like add more elemental effects to them, like more burn damage on the solar classes, more chain lightning on the art classes, things like that. If we're not going to do a full redesign of the system, which I agree, it is weird. It is weird to have 2 different subclass systems within one game just based on if they're light versus dark. But I think all of this, and why this kind of got blown out of proportion, is that it doesn't seem like something we actually have to worry about, or something that's going to actually happen anytime remotely soon. Because Luke Smith came to clarify his comments on Reddit, and he was just like, yeah, I was just kind of talking like theoretically, and like ideas were popping around, but like there are no plans to like really do this anytime soon at all, and like that's not what we're focused on, and like there are way other bigger priorities to be worked on right now. So it doesn't seem like it's going to be an actual issue that we have to be like actively concerned about, like, oh, come this fall they're going to be deleting Well and Bubble from the game or something. That does not seem likely to happen. My personal belief is they are probably more focused on something else they have hinted at in the past, which is making more darkness subclasses. So I think when you design a new subclass from the ground up and you're going to use the node system, it is probably easier to build it that way. And they have already said that there will be multiple darkness subclasses. And I mean, if you can't tell, when you can switch between light and dark in the menu right now, like obviously there's going to be more than one dark subclass. So I think that they're building a different darkness subclass for the Witch Queen. The obvious guess everyone has is some sort of poison subclass. They have been doing poison since Thorn, but now they're experimenting more with the concept of poison through necrotic grips and how that interacts with Thorn. So it's easy to imagine that could be some sort of darkness, evil-based, power that we get from a new shard of the pyramid, or I don't know, or steal it from Savathun, however it's going to work. And then maybe a third one. So then we'll have 3 light subclasses that kind of work one way with the current system, and then 3 darkness subclasses that have the node system that are more customizable. This is very messy and weird, and I don't love it. But again, we run into the wall of like what is logistically possible within Destiny and what their priorities should be, and what should happen in theory, which those never really line up. And I do think it kind of sucked because they did really heavily imply that they were going to slowly move over the light subclasses to this new system, and I kind of hoped that would happen over the course of this year. Maybe we get like one new one a season. That does not seem like it's going to happen at all. So I would really not expect any significant changes to the subclasses for pretty much this entire year. And I kind of hope they buff them a little bit to compete with Stasis in some modes, but like, obviously, if you've been doing any like high-level content, Stasis is not like the be-all, end-all for that content. Like, everyone still needs to use Wells and Bubbles and Celestial, and even before Stasis, it's not like people were, throwing hammers or using Arc Strider on bosses in most raids, so, or Nightfalls or whatever. The biggest thing Stasis has done is just totally disrupt PvP to the point where people are quitting and it's all controversy, and then Trials has been delayed a million times and we don't know how Stasis is going to affect that. That's more of the open question for how Stasis is really kind of changing the game, whereas I don't think there's been as big of a fall off in other subclass use as there might have been. Like, Stasis is very good, but it's also kind of very situational. For like normal, just running around content, it's probably the most fun just because of the shatter aspect and all the different things you can do with it. And like, some things are just not remotely comparable in other classes, like freezing things in an AoE as Warlock with your Rift. Like, that is an exotic ability. That would literally be an ability you would find on an exotic piece of armor, and it's just one of the stasis fragments. So, or aspects, I always get them mixed up. And then we're going to see more stasis aspects and fragments over the next few seasons. They revealed in a different chunk of the interview. So, in short, I don't think you have to worry about supers being deleted, but I also don't think we are going to see any substantive aspect and fragment based rework of the current subclasses for at least a year, maybe longer, maybe not ever, from what it sounds like. And if we're expecting anything, I would probably more expect another darkness subclass next fall. And I think they know they can, and that's something they can sell, because like Stasis is not free. Stasis is a part of Beyond Light. And whatever the new subclass is will probably be a part of the Witch Queen and used as a selling point, whereas reworking the old subclasses might be fine and dandy for balance, but it's free. And if it takes just as much development time, if not more, because there's 3 subclasses, to redesign that whole system, you can see why Smith is saying like, okay, yeah, that's pretty low on the priority list overall. So it's not ideal. Like, there is some really kind of weird, messed up things about it. I don't think the community overreaction was super warranted, but I do think it is worth discussing, which is why I took the time to make this video. And there are different points of it we can talk about, like, no, if this ever does happen, I would really not want supers to be deleted, but also it's a very long time away and they have other priorities and we may never see it at all. So that's my thoughts on the whole situation. I don't know what little nugget Polygon's going to drop next time with their interview. You just released something about how they're going to add like raid perks to other guns eventually. And it's like Joe Blackburn talking about like how long they might have to wait after Deep Zone Crypt to like start putting like recombination on things and not having everyone get mad. So that's going to happen. So we'll see if that has created a new community firestorm while I've been filming this, because that is entirely possible. But yep, those are my thoughts for now. I guess I can make a dawning video at some point. I might do that once we figure out what's going on with this whole community challenge. For now, I don't know, cookie baking, the usual, so nothing really to see there. And I entered the fashion contest, which is probably the most interesting thing I have done for the dawning so far, but that's just the dawning. But yep, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.